Welcome back, everybody. We're diving into a story today from the book of Numbers, chapter 22. It's one of the stories that might seem a little strange at first glance, but stick with us.
Oh yeah, it's got a king, a prophet, and even a talking donkey.
But beyond all that, it's packed with timeless wisdom about fear, blessings, and the surprising ways that, well, wisdom can show up.
You know, those unexpected sources.
Exactly.
Oh.
And it has some pretty powerful lessons that are still relevant to our lives today. So let's set the stage. We've got the Israelites on the move.
They've had a string of victories.
Right. And they're heading toward the territory of King Balak of Moab.
And Balak, well, he's absolutely terrified. He's convinced that they're going to crush him next.
So what does he do?
He goes straight for what he thinks is the most powerful weapon he's got, a curse. He's not interested in, understanding the Israelites or finding a peaceful solution. Nope, he wants to neutralize the threat through, I guess you could say, spiritual warfare.
And to deliver this curse, he calls on Balaam, this well-known diviner, kind of like a spiritual consultant or influencer of his time.
Yeah, someone whose words were believed to have real power. Balak figures if he can just get Balaam to curse the Israelites, their luck will change.
But here's the thing. Before Balaam agrees to do anything, he consults God. And God's response.
No way. Those people are blessed.
And I think this is so important because it really highlights a fundamental truth. While Balak is scrambling around trying to manipulate the situation, God's protection over the Israelites is unwavering.
It's like a powerful reminder that when we're in alignment with what's good, what's right, there's a strength there that just can't be messed with.
But Balak is not one to give up easily.
Oh, no.
He doubles down.
He sends even more impressive emissaries to Balaam. Basically, he's like, name your price. I'll give you anything. Just curse those Israelites.
And this time, God allows Balaam to go, but with a huge condition. He can only speak the words that God gives him. Talk about a dilemma, right? I mean, on one hand, you've got incredible wealth and power being offered.
And on the other, a direct command from God.
And that is where things take a rather unexpected turn. We meet a certain talking donkey.
Oh, yeah. So Balaam is on his way to meet Balak, and an angel of the Lord shows up in the path, sword drawn.
With Balaam, completely oblivious.
But his donkey sees the angel and tries to avoid it.
Of course. And so the donkey swerves off the road. But Balaam is getting frustrated. He starts hitting the poor donkey.
This happens 3 times, and finally the donkey's had enough. It does something totally unbelievable. It starts talking.
Can you imagine Balaam's shock? This ordinary donkey suddenly finding its voice and actually chastising him for his behavior. It's kind of funny when you think about it, but it also carries a really profound message. It's like God is using this humble creature to make a point.
And the message is clear.
Right. The angel of the Lord reveals himself and scolds Balaam for his stubbornness.
He's basically saying, listen, follow my instructions, even if they seem strange or inconvenient. It's not always going to be easy.
And, I think that's such an important lesson. Sometimes the path to truth, to doing what's right, it's not a straight line. There will be temptations, distractions along the way.
Absolutely. But ultimately, we have to stay focused on what we know to be right, even when it's hard, even when it means going against the crowd or maybe even missing out on certain opportunities.
I'm already feeling like this story has so much to unpack. Fear, driving bad decisions, those unchangeable blessings, and now a talking donkey reminding us to be open to unexpected sources of wisdom.
Yeah, where do we even go from here? It's easy to kind of dismiss this as just, an ancient story. But I think the real power lies in the way it reflects our own lives.
It's like those old stories. They often reveal these universal truths about human nature, things that are just as true today as they were thousands of years ago.
Right. And I think Balak's fear is a perfect example of that. I mean, sure, he was dealing with a specific historical situation, but that fear, that feeling of being threatened, that's something we can all relate to.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, how often do we let fear drive our own decisions? Fear of failure, fear of what other people will think. It's amazing how much fear can cloud our judgment.
It's like it takes over and we're not even thinking straight anymore. We're just reacting. And that's when we tend to make choices that we later regret, just like Balak did.
He was so fixated on this perceived threat that he didn't even consider any other options. Like, what about diplomacy? What about just trying to understand the Israelites' perspective?
Exactly. But no, he jumps straight to this extreme solution. And it really reveals his own insecurity and lack of, true leadership.
And that brings us to another key theme that's woven throughout the story: blessings. No matter how hard Balak tried to manipulate the situation, he just couldn't overturn God's favor on the Israelites.
And I think that's a really powerful reminder for us, too. When we align ourselves with what's good, what's right, we tap into this source of strength that's pretty unshakable.
It's interesting because we often think of blessings in terms of, material things or outward success. But this story seems to suggest that true blessings are something much deeper than that.
It's about that inner strength, that resilience that comes from living in alignment with our values.
And that's something that no external force can take away from us.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the talking donkey. It's such a, well, it's a pretty wild image. But there's also this deep lesson there about the unexpected sources of wisdom that we often miss.
It's so easy to get caught up in our own perspectives, our own way of seeing things,
Mm.
and we miss those valuable insights that might be right in front of us.
The fact that God chose to speak through a donkey, of all things, it just goes to show that wisdom can come from anywhere and from anyone. It's a call to be humble, to be open.
It makes me wonder, who are the talking donkeys in my own life? Those people or situations that I might be overlooking because I'm not really paying attention.
Right. It could be someone you work with, a friend who challenges you, or even a child with their unique perspective. The point is, wisdom often shows up in the most unexpected ways.
So I've got fear, we've got blessings, and these unexpected sources of wisdom. It's like all these different pieces are starting to come together.
And I think it becomes even more interesting when we start to think about the implications for leadership. Balak's actions really stand in contrast to the kind of leadership that inspires trust and empowers
Oh,
others.
absolutely. True leadership isn't about manipulation or control. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels valued, respected, and able to contribute.
And it's about leading with integrity, even when it's hard, even when it means going against the grain. Just like Balaam ultimately chose to follow God's instructions, even when they didn't make sense to him.
This deep dive is already blowing my mind, and we've still got so much more to explore. We need to connect all of this to our modern lives and see how these ancient lessons can guide us today. We've been talking about fear, blessings, and those unexpected talking donkeys that offer us wisdom. But there's one more piece of this story that I really want to dig into. It's this idea of divine protection and guidance. Such a powerful concept, but how does it actually show up in our modern lives?
Yeah, that's a question that people have been wrestling with for centuries. I mean, we don't have angels with flaming swords appearing in our path, but that doesn't mean that guidance and protection aren't there. It's more about recognizing it in those subtle ways that it shows up.
So it's not about expecting some big miraculous intervention. It's about being tuned into something a little more, well, a little quieter.
Exactly. It's like we all have this inner compass, this intuitive sense of what feels right and what feels wrong.
Hmm.
But sometimes that inner voice gets drowned out by all the noise of everyday life.
Oh yeah, there's just so much coming at us all the time. It's easy to lose touch with that inner knowing.
It's like trying to have a conversation in a really crowded room. It's almost impossible to hear anything over all the chatter. But if we can find ways to quiet the noise, to create some space for stillness and reflection, that's when we can start to hear that guidance more clearly.
So it's about creating those moments of pause, those opportunities to step back from all the chaos and reconnect with ourselves. But what does that actually look like? I mean, how do we do that?
Well, there are lots of different ways. For some people, it's meditation or prayer. For others, it's spending time in nature, listening to music, creating art, or even just taking a few deep breaths and focusing on the present moment. It's really about finding what works for you.
It's about finding those practices that help us to kind of ground ourselves,
Mm.
to quiet the mind and tune into that deeper wisdom that's already there within us.
Right. And when we do that, we might find that the path forward, it's not always like spelled out for us, but it does become a little bit easier to see.
It's like those little nudges, those intuitive feelings, or maybe it's a sudden burst of inspiration, or even just a chance encounter that seems to point us in the right direction.
Exactly. And sometimes I think we also receive guidance through challenges. It's like those difficult experiences, they force us to reevaluate our priorities, to let go of things that aren't serving us anymore, and to open ourselves up to new possibilities.
It's like that saying, sometimes you have to get lost to find yourself. Maybe those detours, those unexpected twists and turns in the road, maybe they're actually part of a bigger plan.
I love that. It's like trusting that even when we make wrong turns, even when we feel lost or uncertain, there's something guiding us back to the path that's meant for us.
This whole conversation has been so insightful. We've gone from a story about a king, a prophet, and a talking donkey to exploring these really deep themes of fear, blessings, wisdom, and divine guidance. And, it's just amazing to me how these ancient stories can still be so relevant to our lives today.
Yeah, it really speaks to their enduring power. They tap into something deep within us. They offer us guidance, wisdom, and this sense of connection to something bigger than ourselves.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the biggest takeaway for me is this. We're not alone in this journey. Whether you call it divine guidance, intuition, or just that inner knowing, there's something within each of us that's always guiding us towards our highest potential. We just have to learn to listen.
Beautifully said. And maybe that's the most important lesson of all. To cultivate that inner listening, to trust that inner compass, and to have faith that even when the path ahead seems unclear, we're being guided toward our greatest good.